Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into the Warrior Scholar Project. My guest today is Sid Ellington. He's the Executive Director for the Warrior Scholar Project, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Anthony. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure, no problem. So usually I start my guests, where did you go to college? So where'd you go?
I grew up in Western Oklahoma in farm country and went off to the big school, the University of Oklahoma. And that was back in the early 80s. Started in 1980, the fall of 1980 at the University of Oklahoma. Graduated and went into the Navy. Spent 20 years in the Navy. And then after that, I transitioned out. I had my own transition. I took the GI Bill and I went to grad school. And after grad school, I wanted to keep serving in some capacity. So I joined Teach for America. And I spent 5 years with Teach for America, spent 3 years in the classroom in the inner city schools in New Orleans, not too far after removed from Hurricane Katrina. And then Teach for America kicked me upstairs to the national staff where I was running their Veterans Outreach Initiative out of Washington, D.C. And that's how I heard about the Warrior Scholar Project. I met Jesse Rising, our founder, and decided this was a good place to finish up my career.
Great. So let's go into the Warrior Scholar Project. What exactly is it and how does it work?
Well, the Warrior Scholar Project, we're kind of unique in the field of veteran service organizations. There's some 47,000 of them out there. And veterans, a lot of organizations are helping veterans, but very, very few are helping veterans, and especially on the enlisted side in the higher education space. So we've got this tremendous benefit. It's the post 9/11 GI Bill. Congress is just, and the president just signed into law what they're calling the Forever GI Bill, which is a modification to the post 9/11 GI Bill. And it's a very generous benefit. And unfortunately, when soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines are going through transition out of service with a goal of going back to college or going to college, attending most of our enlisted folks are first generation college students. There's not a lot of help in explaining to the veteran the higher education landscape. Department of Defense, Department of Veterans Affairs are focused, rightfully so, on veteran mental health issues. I'm sure that you've heard the data point that there's some 22 veterans commit suicide every single day. So that's a big issue with the VA and certainly with the Department of Defense. Veteran homelessness, medical in general, and veteran employment. Transition out of the service and into gainful employment. The general thinking is that because we've got this incredibly generous post 9/11 GI Bill, this amazing benefit, that higher education is done. You take your GI Bill and you go to college. Well, things have changed a lot since the World War II generation had the GI Bill. Now you've got online for-profit schools. There are a plethora of different options, and a lot of these organizations are very, very good, at recruiting. So what winds up happening is that about 40% of our post 9/11 GI Bill funds each year are winding up in the hands of your for-profit institutions. Many of these are not regionally accredited schools, and in many cases, the veteran, if he or she is able to finish and graduate, and the graduation numbers at some of these schools are very, very low, they wind up with a degree that's not very marketable, especially in today's highly, highly competitive job market. So that's where we come in. We see our enlisted veterans as, problem solvers, team builders. They're highly adaptable. They're used to making decisions under stressful conditions. They're civic assets. You couple that with a top tier education from a great school like Princeton University, and you have, a civic leader, for the next generation. So that's kind of where we fit in. We help with that transition out of service, understanding that most of our enlisted folks are first generation college students. And then we do three things. We use a boot camp format on campus with the schools, in partnership with the schools. And what we're doing is we're trying to build a skill bridge from enlisted service to a top-tier institution like Princeton. We're trying to increase their academic confidence level, engaging them with Princeton professors, Princeton writing instructors, having class on campus so that they come away from that experience thinking, I can really do this. And the last piece is to make them a better informed consumer of higher education so that they know the difference between a school like Princeton and an online for-profit, non-regionally accredited school. So that's kind of how we fit in. We see ourselves, our theory of change is to help build the civic leaders of tomorrow. And we believe that doing that with military experience and everything that entails, and the maturity level and kind of the approach to problems and issues, and couple that with a top-tier education, and you've got somebody that can lead us when I'm old and in a wheelchair.
So now, is it just Princeton University that you're in, or they're in all the colleges? How?
No, I'm name dropping Princeton because you're in New Jersey, and
right.
That's the local school for your audience. But we're at 15 campuses across the nation. We're at Yale, we're at Harvard, we're at MIT, we're at Notre Dame. We're at Texas A&M University, we're at Georgetown. 15 campuses, and basically the format of our boot camp, our academic boot camp, is that the Warrior Scholars are living in the dormitories on campus. They're eating in the dining facilities on campus. They're going to class on campus and engaging with that university or college's, professors. And so they're actually getting that experience, that hands-on experience of what it is like to be a student at Yale or Harvard or MIT or Princeton, for 1 week or 2 week period. We have our two versions.
Now,
and they come out of that, just with a completely transformed view of what they're capable of and what options are available to them.
Now, what's the requirements for these military people to get into these schools? Because these are highly academic schools. So what's the requirement to get in?
There is no requirement other than you need a clean DD-214. And what I mean by that is that, you need to have served honorably and, actually be a veteran. So we check on that. And you need to have the desire. We're not looking for SAT scores or anything like that. We truly believe that with a maturity level that these men and women are coming back into civilian society with, and the experiences, that if they desire to achieve something, they can do that. And all we are trying to do is show them the pathway to do that, build their confidence, and show them that yes, you can apply to Princeton, and you can apply to Yale or Harvard or Notre Dame, and you can get in. And we have students, alumni from our program in the top schools all over the country, including Stanford, which is not a partner of ours.
Sure. Now, these students that are in the military, what's the average age of these students when they go to college? Are these your 30, 40-year-olds, or are these the 20, 25-year-olds?
That's a great question. Generally speaking, they're the younger ones. They're 20 to 20 or 23, 26, 27. But it does vary. I mean, we have individuals that have retired after a 20-year stint. We have individuals that spent 10 years, 11 years, 12 years in. We've got combat veterans, and then we've got, combat support folks. Generally speaking, though, you're talking about the individual who enlisted for 4 years, obtained GI Bill benefits, and now is ready to move on to the next phase of their life.
And what do you find as the progression when they're in college? Where do they go after college? Do you see a transition of where they're going?
We started out in 2012 at Yale with 9 Warrior Scholars. Of those 9 Warrior Scholars, 4 of them already had their degree. It was the pilot program just to see if it would work. So we're just now getting our first graduates. Of our graduates, we just had a recent graduate from Dartmouth University who graduated last spring. He's now at Stanford, doing an internship. And so what we're trying to do for the phase 2 piece is make those partnerships and make those connections with industry, whether that be Northrop Grumman, whether that be NASA. We've had, one of our individuals has done an internship with NASA. We've had one of our alumni do an internship at the White House when Barack Obama was our president. We've had individuals that participate in organizations like the Washington Center or Hill Vets. And yes, the way I look at it is that we haven't done our job if we don't funnel these individuals and provide follow-on opportunities, whether that be employment or that be internships, so that they can move to the next level and truly become, one of our civic leaders.
So do you find a lot of the students from high school, these 18-year-olds, they're enlisting into the different services, they're doing their 4 years, and then they're going to college after that?
Well, they're coming out, and what we want them to do is come to the Warrior Scholar Project first, so that they learn about, the higher education landscape and what all of that entails. And then we encourage, since most folks, our program is in the summer because that's when the classrooms are empty and available and the dorms are empty. So we're only a summer program, but they can come through that. Generally speaking, by now, the application deadlines have passed. So we encourage our folks to take what we've taught them, go to community college for a year where the cost is less. Many times folks can bear that cost out of pocket because they're commuter schools. Save those precious GI Bill funds for a top tier school where the price of tuition is much, much more than at your community college. And so that's the process, or that's the road that we try, to put our folks on. And we found that it's very, very successful. They'll go off to junior college, they'll go to community college, they'll start hitting home runs academically, and now they're a much stronger candidate when they apply to those top tier schools. And they're getting in. And they're getting in at significant numbers.
So are these projects 3-month projects where they're studying only for 3 months, or is this a full college experience?
That's a good question. They're a short boot camp. So we have a 1-week version and a 2-week version. Our 1-week version is grounded in the liberal arts. And so we teach analytic reading and college level writing in conjunction with the professors from the university. We have a standard program that we move from campus to campus. Our 2-week version has a second week tacked on, and that's what we call our STEM component. 74% of our enlisted folks, as they're transitioning out and they're filling out the paperwork, I want to go to college, that's my transition plan, and 74% of those are wanting to major in one of the STEM fields. So we feel like our STEM initiative, this past summer was our second year of launching our STEM initiative, is very, very important. The White House, 2013, the White House Council on Science and Technology produced a paper that projected that with the changes in the job market, America was going to need 1 million STEM majors, undergraduate STEM majors, by the year 2022. Well, we're about halfway there, and we're far below the 500,000 that the economy needs. So we're going to try to do our part going forward and to continue to grow our STEM initiative, get that STEM partnership with more schools, and get more of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who are interested in STEM, but then showing them that they can do that. Because when it comes to the hard sciences, a lot of students in general have what's called impostor syndrome, where they just look at something and they go, this is too hard, I don't think I can do this. The reality of it is that they can, they just have to take kind of a different approach and a different mindset. And we're having a lot of success there too, and we're really looking forward to growing our STEM initiative to more and more campuses.
So now, how do you go about finding these students that are in the military and talking to them about the Warrior Scholar Project?
Several different ways. We have partnerships with a lot of the big military bases. We've got a great working relationship with Lewis McChord. We've got an awesome working relationship with Camp Pendleton out in California. We get a lot of Marines. Fort Drum up in upstate New York has a great partnership. I have had several meetings with the folks over at the Pentagon. And the idea is we just make, on the active duty military side, we present this information. It's then passed on to the active duty soldier and sailor that has already made the decision to transition out. And honestly, Anthony, that's the perfect scenario. We get somebody who's still on active duty, who's about a year out from transition, but has already made the decision to leave the military. They come to the Warrior Scholar Project. Either they take leave or vacation time to do it, or in many, many cases, they're getting what's called permissive TDY orders. In other words, they're given orders, but they're no cost orders. So they, the individual has to foot the bill, but they're not charged vacation time for it. Last summer, 65% of our student participants were actually still on active duty. This is good because, like I said, a big part of what we're trying to do is make each one of our Warrior Scholars a better informed consumer of higher education so that they understand what the higher education landscape looks like. And then when they do transition out, they've got a full GI Bill and that hadn't started getting whittled away. And then, they can follow our, kind of our recommendations, go to community college, build up a lot of these skills, and then transition to a top tier school. And that's a real success story for us when that happens.
Now, do you also find these students to actually go to a four-year college after this program?
In some cases, they do.
They do.
In some cases, they go to junior college. The important data point is that 42% of our alumni, and we've been around now for 6 summers, if you include the pilot year, 42% of a little bit less than 1,000 alumni, 42% of those that are attending a four-year school are doing so at a U.S. News and World Report top 20 school. So we've got a lot of folks at Columbia, we've got folks at Harvard, we've got folks at Notre Dame, at Stanford, at Yale, Georgetown, and we're very, very proud of that. And they're getting into these top tier schools and they're doing really well. And like I said, 65% of all enlisted veterans are first generation college students. So that's a significant win.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So if I'm a high school student, what's the recommendation that you give a high school student? What's the path that student would have to take?
Are you talking about somebody just coming out of high school, or?
Yeah, just coming out of high school.
Well, it depends on what you're wanting as a high school student. If you're a little bit unsure, personally, a 20-year Navy veteran that I am, I would recommend going into the service because I think it does, especially for our young men, it does amazing things. Maturity, responsibility. I mean, people are absolutely transformed from kids into men. Coming out of that 4 years later, if you decide to transition out of the service, now you have a much better grip on what life requires, on the kind of hard work that you're going to have to put in, and some of the opportunities that are made available to you through your military service. And one of them, is that all-important GI Bill with the incredible benefit and the opportunities that thing opens up, for each one of our enlisted service members.
Now, is there a lot of networking that goes on with this as well? Do you see students trying to meet other people in different fields so they have something that they can go to?
You mean beforehand or
both, before and after?
So they have a much better understanding of the importance of networking after the Warrior Scholar Project. There's a huge difference between the culture of the military and the culture of the civilian world. Generally speaking, in the military, you don't use the word I. There is no I in team. It's all about, our folks, my soldiers, my sailors. I take criticism, I pass down, praise and recognition. In the civilian world, it's a little bit, a little bit different than that. You have to be able to advocate for yourself. You have to have an understanding of what you want, and networking is a very important part of that. And so we teach and expose, we have a reception at the end of each course where these individuals can practice, some of the social skills that we've exposed them to, and they can start their, building their networking skills, because it's important not only in college, but it's also critically important, later on, especially if you land an internship with a great company. You're looking at trying to build the relationships that's going to lead to a full-time job and gainful employment.
So, what are some of the challenges that you've faced with that you've seen from students that have gone to the Warrior Scholar Project? Have you seen any kind of challenges that have come up?
Of course, a lot of, in the military, you're so taken care of, and the routine is very solid, and it's very predictable. And while you do have to grab your bags and deploy, there's a standard military routine for everything. You're taught, you're told where to be, what time to be there, and what uniform to wear, and what time we're going to have chow. You get into the civilian world. So in the military, it's kind of a top-down sort of,
Sure.
command and control, and in the civilian world, especially on a college campus, it's more of a bottom-up. You have to know what assets are out there, what's available to you as a student, and then you've got to know how to go ask for that kind of help. So rather than constantly having stuff shoved down at you as a civilian, you've got to go looking for it, and you've got to be able to ask for help. Asking for help is another challenge for a lot of our military people, because in the military, you just press ahead, you just push through it. In the civilian world, you've got to learn, to ask for help and assistance, and you got to know where to ask for that help and assistance. So it's kind of a mental shift, and that's a big part of what we do. In the evenings, we have these discussion sessions where we have little funny little titles for them, like the degreening session, the challenges session. We have financial management, because once again, now everything's up to the individual. And for a lot of these folks, it's the first time in their life they've ever had that kind of responsibility. So pushing through is not recommended. You go seek help
Great.
at the college level.
That's great. And so, what are some of the passions that these military people have when they go to school? Do you see a particular field that they like?
Interestingly enough, a lot of them want to major in STEM, and we're just getting that thing going. And our STEM students are incredibly enthusiastic, about the program. But in a lot of cases, we expose them, our liberal arts and humanities side, we expose them to, citizenship and democracy, and that lights a fire in a lot of folks to major in fields like political science. And then they take these internships at places like I mentioned, the Washington Center or Hill Vets or some of the other, things around the Beltway, that are available, to students and to military veterans.
So each military person gets a certain amount from the VA to go towards schooling.
Right. The post 9/11 GI Bill, is a benefit that you can. It's basically, it's like a voucher. You get enrolled in the school. The school understands that you've got GI Bill benefits. There's paperwork that's involved. Most of your top colleges have somebody who understands how that works, and then the VA pays the school, for tuition, books, fees, and then each one of the students gets a living stipend, and that living stipend can vary based on what part of the country they're living in. So if you're going to school at Columbia, living stipend is going to be considerably higher than if you're going to to school in the state of Oklahoma.
Gotcha. So we're coming to the end of our show, and I usually ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the military folks that are out there that want to join the Warrior Scholar program? What do you want to tell them?
Well, first of all, have a real solid plan as to what you want out of education, and have a goal, and then apply. We've got rolling applications. It's www.warrior-scholar.org, and we're collecting applications for 2018 now. Seats fill up pretty fast, so get your application in. But the biggest piece of advice is understand what you want, understand that that's attainable, and be very, very tenacious and determined, because you're capable of much, much, much more than you realize academically.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Anthony. I really, really appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.